Good afternoon, everyone. Our session is on Find Your Way Up, a candid look at roadmap to leadership. We are honored to be joined by Turpin, apologize, is the CISO for Fredkin's Group, where he serves as the cybersecurity leader for a global multi-billion-dollar custodian spanning automotive, hospitality, entertainment, and sports and adventures. Keith brings a wealth of experience. As the former CISO of Universal Health and Aviations, as well as the Boeing Technical Fellow, where he led global security infrastructures and risk operations across over 20 countries. His accomplishments includes being named the CISO of the Year by 2024 Houston Large Enterprise. He's also inducted into the CISO Hall of Fame, which I thought that was pretty fantastic. He's recognized as is recognized by Cyber Defense magazine as the top 100 global CISOs in the nation. He's also an FBI CISO Academy graduate, an OWASP project leader, and a respected voice in the cybersecurity community. Please welcome Keith.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Can you guys hear me okay? Sound good for everybody? Okay. How many people know what the Freaking Group does? Raise your hand. You guys don't count. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly, so you know what the company I work for does. We're one of the 50 largest privately held companies in the country, but most of the business we don't do as the Freaking Group. We're the back end to a lot of other companies. For instance, Toyota operates as 3 regional divisions in the continental US. We own one of those divisions. In the Gulf States region, we are the Toyota company. If you come to our headquarters, it doesn't say Freaking on it, it says Toyota. So all the Toyota dealerships in the Gulf States region buy their cars from us. Every official Toyota part that's sold is sold through us. That's probably our biggest company, single company. That's about $10 billion by itself. We own a logistics company. We move trucks and cars all over the country from manufacturers, from BMW to Mercedes to Toyota. We run an insurance company. We do insurance. Like if you go to a dealership and you say, I want an extended warranty or I want coverage for my tires or anything like that, we're usually the financier behind that that's guaranteeing that for the dealerships. And we run a number of dealerships. So if you're here in Houston and you've bought a car from Northside or Westside Lexus, those are our stores. That's what we do in the automotive space. Then you get outside the automotive space, and we do a lot of other things. So for instance, if you're a soccer fan, we own Everton, which is the British Premier League team. If you are a soccer fan and you don't like Britain's teams, we also own AS Roma, which is Italy's pro soccer team. So when you get out of sports, we own some other teams besides that, and golf resorts and some other things. But you get outside of that, we own the Auberge Resorts Collection. It's an international hotel chain. And let me see, what am I leaving out? I'm leaving movie and television production companies. We have 4 of those. Some of you here, you're in Texas, maybe you watch Landman. We are the producers for Landman, if you like Billy Bob Thornton. We also, our movie companies have won the Oscar for Best Picture of the Year 2 times in the last 5 years. So we've got a lot of different, people ask me what sector I'm in. I'm like, just pick anything, really. It's we have technology companies, energy companies, manufacturing companies. I'm the CISO over the collection of the Freaking companies. So it keeps me busy and it makes my life interesting. But that's a little bit about the company that I work for, because most people don't know who we are. Where am I pointing to? Pointing? Let me see. It's this one, right? The arrow? Here, hold on a second. Ah, there we go. Thank you. Okay, so one thing, what was I doing when I was 27 years old, right? People, how many of you are 27 or younger in this room? There's a lot of you. A lot of you aren't doing this. This job sucked, right? So at 27, I was an industrial hygiene technician, and my job was to identify hazardous materials in old building sites before they demolished a building or refurbished that building. So my job was to wear a Tyvek suit, air mask, and crawl into every hole in that building to find hazardous materials. I do not recommend this as a career choice, right? But this is where I was at 27, and I want to make sure to level set people, no matter where you are in your career, no matter how old you are, what you're doing, what you're going to be doing in the future is not dependent on what you do now or what you did 5 years ago. It's about where you're going, not where you've been. So I eventually decided that job sucked, and I went back to college at 28, and I studied engineering. I studied mechanical engineering. It took me 5 years to get my degree. I got finally to a point where, and this is a piece of career advice, while I was still in college, I learned pretty quickly how important it is to help other people. Not because you expect something, but because it's the right thing to do. But when you do that, a lot of times it's going to circle back. So I was in college, and the head of my department really wanted to host an engineering competition for local colleges. But he couldn't find an instructor who had the time or the willingness to volunteer and run it. And so he talked about it all the time. Oh, I really want to do this, I want to do this. So one day I went into his office and I said, how about I do it? What if I built the competition and I set it all up and you agree to fund it? He said, sure, that would be great. For me, I just thought it would be a good experience, right? So I built the engineering competition. It was a big success, and we, high-fived and we moved on. Where that came back to me later is I didn't know nothing about nothing when I was in college. None of my family had ever gone to college. I didn't know what you should do when you were there. I didn't know anything about internships. So about April of my junior year, I went to him and I'm like, dude, I've applied for all these internships, but they said they're all closed. What do I do? He says, let me make a call. Because I'd helped him. He called a friend of his who was an executive at Boeing and said, I know your internships program is closed. Would you make an exception for this guy? And they did. So I ended up as an intern at Boeing, and that internship turned into an engineering job at Boeing, where I got to be a manufacturing engineer on the 747, and I eventually ended up being responsible for all the engineering and the manufacturing processes for a section of the 747 fuselage, right, which was like my dream job. However, Boeing experienced a big downturn while I was there, and one day my boss comes up to me and he says, hey, we're going to lay off 5,000 engineers in 60 days, and you need to find another job. Because in Boeing, the engineering job was unionized, which meant the way that they picked who got laid off was how long you'd been with the company. So he said, you haven't been here enough years to survive the cut. And I'm like, man, this is my dream job. How could this happen? This sucks. And he says, we are losing a lot of people in IT. This is during the dot-com boom. He says, we are losing a lot of people in IT. We need IT people. You're better at IT than a lot of these engineers are. Would you work in engineering IT? And I'm like, I don't want to work in IT. I spent 5 years doing an engineering degree, and now I have this dream engineering job. Why would I want to work in IT? He's like, okay, just thought I'd ask. So then I spent the next 60 days trying to find a job, and he came back to me 55 days later and said, hey, I'm going to lay you off in 4 days. How would you like to work in IT? I was like, I would love to work in IT. So engineering job closed, off to IT operations. Now, this is important to understand that when you go through these things in your career, I went into that job kicking and screaming. I didn't want to be in IT. I didn't think it was where my career path was. I was pissed about not being an engineer anymore. But I decided you can either say, I'm going to wallow in the fact that life kicked me in a way I didn't want to be kicked. Or you can say, oh yeah, well, bring it, and move on. And so I was working on my engineering degree, my master's degree at the time, and I switched. I pulled out of the engineering master's degree, and I re-enrolled into IT systems and got my master's degree in IT systems. I said, if I'm going to be in IT, at least for now, I'm going to master IT. And if I get a chance to go back to engineering, I'll go back to engineering. while I was in IT, we worked a project where Boeing bought another company out of the country, and they bought this company and they wanted to have them do some engineering work on a system that handled export-controlled information. I don't know if any of you worked with export-controlled information. There's a lot of rules and regulations. The government says who can see and who can't see certain types of data. So what happened was this application that they wanted to give these people access to had never been designed to segregate access. It assumed that every person who worked on that was going to sit in the US. So they came to me and a few other people and they said, can you build a new front end that identifies who and where people are and what their rights are, and then ships them only off to see stuff that they need to see and can have allowance to see? And so we said, sure, we could work that. We'll take it as a challenge, right? So we built this new front end for the application. We're getting it in place. It seems to be working great. And I get a call from the enterprise security program. They're like, hey, you did this thing, this front end for this application for this export controlled system, right? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, we need to talk to you. Here's the meeting time. I'm like, well, shit. We did something wrong, and I'm about to get in trouble. Was really what I thought. So we go in, I sit down, it's like the engineering team, the incident response engineering team manager, the senior manager, the director, and one of the senior engineers in the room. And I'm like, this can't be good. How can I help? And they're like, so you built this thing, right? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, we like it. Would you want to do it for other people? And I'm like, do what? They're like, help them build entry systems like this to help with segregation and authentication, authorization. I'm like, I don't even know what half the words you just said are, but I'm happy to help. Let me know what you need. You know, so we had talked for a while. I went back to my desk. I'm like, well, I'm not getting fired. That's a plus. My boss came up to me and he said, so they want to hire you. And I'm like, what do you mean they want to hire me? He said, they want to hire you to do security. And I'm like, I don't know anything about security. He said, well, they think you know about security. I'm like, well, I really liked my boss at the time. I'm like, what do you think I should do? He said, dude, I think security is going to be a big deal. You should do it. I'm like, he says, besides, if you don't like it, I'll hire you back. I'm like, done. So I go and I take my first job in security, and then I went on this very winding path through a security career where I worked in a very eclectic set of jobs. I didn't have like one thing I did through my career, right? My first security analyst job was around data security and data management. That was the first thing I did. Then I went on to supply chain security, where I built Boeing's first supply chain security management program from the ground up for one of the largest supply chains in the world. That was a great accomplishment. The benefits of doing that and doing it well still provide me benefits today, and that was a long time ago. But I still get asked to speak on supply chain management, and I help define some of the standards, international standards around supply chain management. Then I moved to international operations. Cool job. I actually angled for this for a long time. One of my goals in my job was to see the world and have somebody else pay for it, right? I wanted to figure out how can I make that work. And so I found out there was this group that did international security operations, and they traveled all over the world working with our subsidiaries, and Boeing has a lot of subsidiaries, to help them ensure good security practices. And I thought, man, I want on that team. And so, man, I was angling for like 2 years trying to figure it out. How do I get on this team? Shaking hands, kissing babies, making friends. How can I help you? Volunteering wherever I could. And then finally, the director who was over that said, hey, I know this is something you really want to do. We have an opening. You want it? I'm like, yes, sign me up. So I got to go and redefine the entire program around how Boeing did international operations, which was a great job. It was super cool. I got to travel all over the world, and I also got to understand a lot about industrial espionage that I had no idea about, because a lot of the problems we dealt with in foreign countries were about countries who were trying to hack us to either steal our technology or undermine us on deals. Because when you are a company that signs $20 billion deals, other companies want a piece of that, right? And some of the things I had to deal with would make a great book if I could ever tell the stories, because the lengths that some of the agencies, other country agencies, would go to hack us was amazing. But it was a great experience. And then I moved on to application security, which sometimes you get asked to do a job that you're not qualified for. And it can be a reason to scare you to not do that job. I was doing international security operations, and the management changed. And the person who had hired me left, and a new director came in, and I had worked with that director several years ago. We did not get along, not at all. So he gets in, he says, hey, I'm bringing in my guy. I want you to train him to do your job, and I'm gonna be finding something else for you to do. So I'm picturing doing dishwashing in the back of the building somewhere because this guy did not like me. So I had another director who I'd done work with in the past. He says, hey, I understand you're reporting to this guy, and that guy sucks, so do you want to come work for me? And I'm like, yeah, doing what? He says, I want you to build an application security program from the ground up. And I'm like, I haven't written code in like 8 years. I can't do application security. He's like, can you figure it out? I'm like, probably. How long are you gonna give me? He's like, I have faith. Can you do it in a year? And I'm like, sure. So I took that job and I spent a year trying to figure out application security from ground zero. It was a great experience. It changed the direction of my entire career. That job was the hardest career change I ever made. I absolutely sucked at that job when they hired me. Like, I was so useless that I even thought I was useless. I'm like, my God, they're gonna fire me at some point because I suck at this. But they gave me time, and I got good at it. I got good enough at it that I eventually wrote the OAuth secure coding standards, and I was eventually invited by NIST to be a US delegate to the International Standards Organization to help write the first standards on software security from not having any idea of what I was doing, right? So I then went on to be a technical fellow, and eventually I got offered a job to be a CISO. A lot of people talk about being afraid of a job. The first time I got offered a CISO job, I was like, holy moly. I am so far over my head if I take this job. And in fact, I was so afraid of it that when they said, hey, we want to hire you to do it, what would it take? I said, oh, that's a great question. I'm going to write a really obnoxious list of requirements because I really don't want to do this job and I don't think I'm qualified and I don't want to fail at it. So here's this really obnoxious list. Thank you. Now I'm done with that. 1 minute. 3 days later, they called me back. The CIO said, I just talked to the board. We agree to everything. I'm like, well, shit, I guess I'm going to do a CISO. So that's how I got started as a CISO. Yes? Chief Information Security Officer, typically the head of cybersecurity for a company. So, yeah, so I'd done a lot of things in security. I'd never run the whole thing, right? And so I felt really nervous about that. So that's a little bit about me, and I eventually went on to be the CISO for Freakin'. What holds people back in the success of their career? A lot of times it's one of these things. One, you lack career management knowledge. So you don't know how to manage your career effectively, and I'm hoping to help with some of that today. You lack required skills. So let's say you want to be a baker, but you never turned an oven on. You got some steps, right? If you don't have the skills today for the thing you want to do, learn those skills. Fear of failure. Everybody has this. The point is to not let it rule your decision making. Everybody's afraid. It's okay. I've been afraid a lot in my career. I didn't let the fear rule my decisions. Use your head, not your fear. Limited opportunities. So one of the things that happens with some people, and it's useful to know, is especially in smaller companies, you may have limited opportunities. You're in a role, you want to do something more interesting, you want to do something bigger, you want to change paths. If you're in a small company, that may not be an opportunity that you're going to get. That means you have to be willing to either change companies, or if you're in a big company, move around. Even though I was with Boeing for 18 years, I had 6 or 7 different jobs while I was there that were completely unrelated to each other. It was great to be able to do that in a single company. But a lot of times you don't have that, and you need to move around to get the opportunities you want. And the other thing is being uncomfortable with change. This is not the same, although it's similar to fear of failure. You may be the shit. Like, you know your job better than anyone else does. You are excellent. You know you are excellent, but you are also so comfortable where you're at that the idea of jumping into the unknown seems really scary because that water is dark. There could be sharks or octopuses or who knows what, right? So you don't want to jump into that water because you don't know what's there. The water you're in is very comfortable. You know what's in that water, right? You have to get over that. Life will hand you changes whether you want it or not. You can change because you choose to change, or you can wait for the change to come find you. But things will change. No matter what happens, I found, no matter how good, especially if you're in a spot where you're like, oh my God, this is the best job ever. I love every single thing about this job. That is what you say right before life comes and poops on you, right? It just happens. So, yes?
So regarding the fear of failure and not letting fear control your decisions, have you had any experiences in which you recall having to adjust or fear driving you towards something rather than away? Where you're doing, oh, that's scary, that's intimidating, I'm going to rush towards it, and maybe I shouldn't.
No, because I'm risk averse. So it's why I've never become an entrepreneur. Not because I'm afraid I couldn't do it, but because I just don't have the risk appetite for it, and I know myself well enough to know I don't have the risk appetite for it. That's not to say I don't do stuff. Like, I run a business outside of what I do in cybersecurity that has nothing to do with cybersecurity. But it's not, I'm not going to full on jump into a whole separate entrepreneurial career. Yeah. Huh? I'm a professional wildlife photographer. There you go, something totally out of the blue. In fact, my second book is about to come out, so I'm really excited about that. I'm doing a Texas wildlife guide, so featuring over 500 species of Texas wildlife. It took me 4 years and about 40,000 miles of traveling the back roads of Texas. So there you go. Something interesting about me has nothing to do with security. This is important. It's important to know what is important to you now. And when I say now, you need to re-ask yourself this question every couple years. Because what's important to you when you're 22 isn't necessarily the same thing that's important to you when you're 27 or when you're 37. Your career changes. Maybe when you first start your career, you just want the money, baby. You want to move around, you don't care what you're doing, long hours. Then you meet somebody and you're like, oh, now I have a relationship. Then you have a first kid, and you're like, I have a family. Priorities change, right? Sometimes it's just that you've checked the box on some priorities. For me, at one point in my career, seeing the world was important, and that was a driver for my career. Work-life balance has always been a driver in my career. I've never worked for a company that didn't allow me to have good work-life balance, and so Jeff Bezos, I know he's got a whole different philosophy on that. I've been very successful. My team has been very successful working normal hours. So I don't think that it's a requirement to work 60 or 70 hours a week to be successful, and I will argue anybody about that. Because you can can you work someone to burn them out and get some high performance out of them for a little while? Sure. Long term? No, it doesn't help. I've had one turnover on my entire organization in 5 years, right? My organization in 2023 was named by Fortune magazine as one of the best security organizations in the country. My team, CSO magazine, every year hands out an award to the 50 top performing security teams. My team's won it twice in the last 3 years. They work 40-hour weeks. So, life balance is important to me, it's important to my team. Helping others, the culture. Are you learning new skills? Sometimes it's the pay, sometimes your drivers pay, which is okay. Right? You just need to know what is important to you right now. So something that has changed, if I could put a gold banner around any of these slides and say, if you want to change your life, it's this one. So volunteering and getting involved in industry organizations has had more impact on my career than any other thing I have done. Every major cool opportunity I've had is because I was involved in an organization outside of my job. And one of the things that's important to realize is you may be amazing at your job. Do you know who knows that? Your boss and the people who touch you on a regular basis where you work. And that's it. That's your ring of influence. That's your ring of people who know how awesome you are. You need a bigger ring, like a big ring, right? And the way you get that is by getting out and getting involved. And the biggest changes, as I said, in my career because I did this. As an example, here's a great example. I was a junior engineer in cybersecurity, and I wanted to be a senior engineer. And I went to my boss and I said, hey, I'm ready to be a senior engineer. And my boss said, you don't check all the boxes. I'm like, what boxes? My boss said, you have to have some level of leadership experience to be a senior engineer. I'm like, well, how do I get that? She said, well, you have to lead some projects. And right now, the senior engineers are leading all the projects. I'm like, this seems like a catch-22. Like, I have to lead something, but then only the senior engineers can lead something, and I can't be a senior engineer until I lead something. She's like, it's just the way it works. I'm like, so your holdup, though, if I could find a way to lead something and show leadership, then we could have a separate conversation about this. She's like, yeah, sure, we can do that. Which I think was her way of saying, just get out of my office. So what I did is I thought, you know what, maybe I could find some volunteer opportunities. And so I looked up the local chapter of the ISSA, which they have one here in Houston. They have a booth. If you haven't gone talk to them, go talk to them. I looked up the local chapter. I was in Seattle at the time. And I said, you know what, I don't know what they do, but maybe there's some opportunity there. So I went to my first ISSA meeting. And I sat in the back. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything. And I'm sitting back there, and the president of the ISSA chapter gets up, and he's talking, and he says, by the way, Bob has taken a job in Silicon Valley, and he's out of here. And we are now short a communications director. We're looking for a volunteer to be the communications director for the chapter. And I'm like, I'm not even a member of the chapter. I'm visiting, right? And so I'm sitting in the back, and I'm waiting for somebody to volunteer. And there's 50 people in the room. Nobody raises their hand. So then he goes on to give a spiel about how important it is to the chapter, how it helps your career, how, all these reasons why you should volunteer. Nobody raised their hand. And I'm like, what? I am here for leadership opportunities. So I'm like, he's like, and who are you? And I'm like, this is my first day here, but I'm willing to sign up and help out. He's like, that's what we're looking for, this kind of initiative. And I'm like, yeah, take that. So I went on to become the communication director for the ISSA, and I helped set up their first regional security conference that they ran. And about 8 months later, I went back to my boss. I said, I've now been a director for a nonprofit organization for 8 months and successfully led one of the only regional security conferences in the area. I think I have leadership experience. She's like, okay, yep, I agree. Next thing I know, I got promoted. I got promoted because the ISSA gave me an opportunity to learn about leadership. So all of these are organizations that you can work with. Another example is OWASP. So when I wrote Boeing's secure coding standard, I didn't know that that was something other people would get value out of. So I told Boeing, I said, hey, I'd like to share this with other people. I'd like to have them get a feel for this and tell me if I'm barking up a wrong tree. And so Boeing said, yeah, you can share it with people. So I shared it with some people. They immediately came back and said, publish this. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, you need to make this public. Like, this needs to go to other people. So I went back to Boeing. We went through 9 months of negotiations with Boeing Legal, trying to convince them that the programming standard I developed had no financial value, because if they thought it was worth anything, they weren't going to release it. And eventually, they released it to OWASP. It became an OWASP flagship project. I went in to be on part of the OWASP Global Projects Committee. I ended up, again, NIST and International Standards Organization, all of that, because I got involved with OWASP. I also met some of the coolest people and got to speak all over the world at OWASP chapters. It was a really great experience. So get involved. Even the first CISO job I got was because I was working with, are anyone out of San Antonio? Anyone gone to LASCON? Have you gone to LASCON out of San Antonio? There's a security conference in San Antonio called LASCON, and I got to participate in that one year, and then I also got invited to speak at a conference, AppSec conference in Austin the same year. And I was down here, in Texas, I was doing these talks, and I went back, and the CIO for Universal Weather and Aviation had been looking for about 8 months for someone to be a CISO. And he had some people he was close to who had heard me talk. And they came back to him and said, hey, you need to call this guy. And so I got this call out of the blue from the CIO of that company saying, I think I want to hire you. And I'm like, who are you? And it turns out that it was because his friends had seen me talk at a conference. And I got that job opportunity. So all these opportunities were because I participated. And the Houston FBI needed help with transportation security, managing transportation security in the Houston area. And so I spent 2 years as a volunteer transportation sector chief for them. They said, oh, that was really good. So they sent me through the FBI Leadership Development Program that they ran out of Houston. And when I was done with that, they said, would you like to go to Quantico and train? And I'm like, yeah, yeah. So they sent me off to Quantico. I stayed there. I lived at Quantico. I trained with the agents there. Some of the coolest experiences, in fact, I got trained on fraud by Frank Abagnale. So I don't know how many of you know who Frank Abagnale is. He is the guy who's the subject of the movie Catch Me If You Can, and he still volunteered and does work for the FBI, and he taught the fraud classes I took while I was at Quantico. Super cool experience. Staying with your current organization, you highly value your work, your team, your company culture, you're building a deeper institutional knowledge, and a current role offers stability. These are reasons why people choose to stay. There's nothing wrong with choosing to stay. Reasons you might want to change employers in 2 to 3 years. If money is your biggest driver and you have flexibility about where you go, where the job is, you're going to go. Whatever the hours are, you're going to go. If that's your priority, is to maximize your salary, especially when you're younger, moving every 2 to 3 years will do that, absolutely, hands down. Opportunities for the fastest career growth and the fastest position advancement. Now, you can only pull this off for so long before people start saying, hey, you're a mover, I'm not hiring you. But 2, 3, maybe 4 times, and it makes a difference. But again, it depends on what's important to you. Because the problem with moving every 2 years for a cybersecurity professional is in 2 years, you get just good enough to be good at your job, but not good enough that you've really seen end-to-end life cycle on how the whole security program is running. You've just seen a snippet. And so what happens is if you do this too long, you never really get to understand the full life cycle of something. And that matters eventually in your career. So 3 important questions. If you go out to interview somewhere, but early in the interview, not at the end, not when they say, do you have any questions for us, but early on, you should ask them if you can ask a couple questions. You should ask them, what attributes do you find most valuable in your team members, right? What are the things that they value in the people who already work for them? What is it in my resume that made you select me? That's why me? Why did you find me interesting? And then, what are your team's most important goals that I might be able to help with? Take the answer to those 3 questions, and for the rest of your interview, you sell how you meet those, how your skills, your experiences, your jobs make you the right fit for the team with the right skills, solving the right problems. Right? And maximize your offer. This is funny because I had someone who worked for me recently, moved on to a different company, the one person in 5 years who left. And I wasn't mad because he left. I was mad because he didn't negotiate a signing bonus. He left, we talked about it. I'm like, what'd you get for your bonus? He's like, I didn't ask for a bonus. I'm like, always ask for a bonus. No one is gonna get, some people are afraid. They're afraid to ask for a bonus when they change jobs. They're like, what if they say no and then they don't want to talk to me anymore? That doesn't happen. Nobody is gonna say, man, we really love this guy or this gal and we wanna hire them. They just asked for a signing bonus. We need to choose somebody else. That conversation never happens. They may not give you the bonus because they don't have budget for it. Not everyone will. But they may come back and they say, is there something else we can offer instead? And so you may be able to negotiate. Maybe you get additional time off. Maybe it's something else, right? Always ask. Career growth is about mastering new skills and embracing change. I don't care what anyone tells you, what your company standards are about performance management and annual reviews. This is what managers care about. Do you excel at your work? Do you help others to succeed at their work? Can you build new skills? Because we're in IT. Things are changing all the time. You can't sit on your laurels and be like, I was good at this. I was a great mainframe guy. Still am. Of course, now the mainframe guys are worth a fortune because nobody knows how to do that job, but they had to wait 35 years for that to happen. Take initiative, right? When I look at my team, if I have to tell you everything you need to do, you don't need to be working for me. I want you to come to me and tell me what we should be doing, right? I'll have to make a decision, but I want you to be saying, we could make our program better, we can make our team better, we can make our company better, and I want you to be bringing those ideas to me. And finally, if you are a high performer, if you rock it, you know you rock it, watch out for overcommitting. This is a high performer's kryptonite. It's really important. What'll happen is a high performer has 3 things that they're supposed to do. They rock it. Their boss is like, man, you're better doing those 3 things and everyone else is at doing 1 thing. I'm going to give you a 4th thing. You're like, okay, I will do it. And then now you're not quite as good because you're split 4 ways. But you're still better than most people. And the boss says, man, I'm going to give you a 5th thing. Can you do it? Yeah, yes, I can do it. I want you to be happy with me, so I'm going to say yes. But now you've got 5 things, but those 5 things are now performing at the same level that everyone else is performing, or maybe even lower. And each time you say yes, your overall performance is going down because you're overloading yourself. You have to be willing to say no. You have to be willing to push back. If you're a high performer and you want to stay a high performer, you have to balance taking on additional responsibility with getting into the trap of overcommitting. I've seen more high performers screw up their career by overcommitting than a lot of other things. Check my time. I'm running out of time. I got to talk fast. Okay. Learn to articulate your ideas. If you are a technical professional, speaking is not necessarily our best skill, right? I have a lot of IT people. I grew up as a technologist. You know, speaking is not natively, inherently easy for a lot of us. Learn it. Get over it. We all have to present ideas. Whether you're presenting to a group about a new project you want to do or whether you're presenting to the board, it doesn't matter. You've got to learn to be comfortable. You don't have to do this. You don't have to get up in front of a bunch of people you don't know and talk about a subject. But you do have to learn how to speak to people you work with, how to present your ideas and your proposals. When you're putting a proposal together, this is the stuff that matters. Where do we need to drive improvement? Why does this project matter to the business? What is it we're trying to achieve, and how are we going to achieve it? That's what you need to present when you're providing a proposal to the business. And if you're uncomfortable talking in front of people, look into Toastmasters International. It was how I got over my speaking nervousness. I used to get up in front of 10 people and I was having a panic attack, right? It's fine, it happens. Toastmasters helps you learn how to speak better and in front of a group, and helps you overcome the challenges we all face in being in front of other people. This is a free organization. You can join, they help you learn to speak better. Learn basic project management skills. You don't need to be a PMP, project management professional. You do need to understand how to define milestones that define the path to success. Because those milestones become the metrics that you use to demonstrate that you are achieving success on your project. When your boss says, how far are you along? What have you got done so far? It's the milestones that help you do that. All of my team, I have learned basic project management skills. You don't need a Gantt chart. You don't need to have flow diagrams. All you need to know is how to define milestones and how to pick milestones that matter in a project. Also, define what done looks like. The reason you want to define what done looks like is because of a thing called scope creep. A lot of times when people are running projects, they get into it and they're like halfway in, they're like, ooh, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? Now that we're further into it, I can see the advantages of doing this. The next thing you know, your project's twice as big as you planned it to be, and you're in no way gonna hit your budget or hit your deadline. You turn those things into a second phase of your project. Stick with what you've defined, stick with what you've agreed to deliver, focus on that and deliver what you agreed to. Then you can say, here's how we can improve it. Right? Scope creep will sabotage projects. I've seen teams go years not being successful implementing a project because they get tied up in scope creeps. Peter Principle. Has anyone heard of the Peter Principle before? The Peter Principle says people tend to be promoted to their level of incompetence. That means that the skills that got you your first promotion are not the same skills that are gonna get you your third or fourth promotion. You got your first promotion from being maybe a technical person to a team lead, or from being a technical engineer to a manager because you were a good technical person. That's not the same skills you need as you become a manager, a second level manager, a director, an executive. Skills change over time, and if you don't find a way to improve those skills, what happens is you reach a spot where you fall off the ledge because your skills aren't the right skills anymore for the job you now have, and you stop. Things you can do: learn your next level's responsibilities, find out what they are. Start building the skills for the next level now. Even if you don't think you're gonna go after it for 2 or 3 years, start building the skills so that you're ready when the opportunity comes. Get a mentor, get somebody who understands the path you're trying to be on and can help advise you on that path. And conduct an honest self-assessment. If you're lying to yourself about your skills or your capabilities, you're only hurting yourself. So this is very similar to the structure of almost every organization, whether it's IT, finance, HR, it doesn't really matter, coaches at a football team. You have players, they're on the field, they're doing the job. Those are analysts, those are engineers. They're doing the work, those are operations people. You have an offensive team captain who is on the field doing work and also helping lead. That's your team leads, right? You have an offensive coach who's developing an offensive tactics and calls plays. That's your first line manager. You get your head coach. Your head coach is developing team strategies and managing staffing support, handling media relations. That's your senior manager, maybe your director, right? And then you have a general manager who's over all the team activities. That's your executive. Here's something that's important. The biggest failure of first-time managers is not realizing they're a manager. When you are a manager, get off the field. You're not a player anymore. And if you think by jumping in and doing technical work to help your team, you're helping them, you're not, you're crutching them. Your job is to teach them to be the great technical professional you were, not to go in and save them because they aren't. And it's the reason it's a struggle, especially for technology managers, is you got promoted because you were the best technology person. The catch to that means that everybody that works for you isn't as good as you. And you know they're not as good as you. And so when you see their work, you're like, well, this could be a little better. And so you try and make it better. Stop doing that. Coach them to make it better. Don't do it yourself. When you get into executive, once you're out of management, you start into executive leadership, the knowledge pillars you have to have are completely different. You need knowledge of the overall business. How does the business make money? What matters to the business? What are the business risks, right? You need to understand strategic planning. That's not what is my team going to do in 3 months or this year. What are they going to be doing 3 years from now? How do I start working on something today that's not going to manifest for 3 to 4 years? Financial acumen. Financial planning is my least favorite part of my job, but it's also something I have to do. I just finished financial planning for 2026. I did not slit my wrist, so I made it through that successfully. But it's something you have to understand. You have to understand a balance sheet. You have to understand how to talk to finance people. You have to understand how renewals and purchases and how things get calculated by finance people who make shit up. It's my understanding of how finance works anyway. But you still have to work with them. And legal competence. If you're in information security, you have to understand the compliance requirements that impact your organization, or the legal requirements that impact your organization. I probably talk to our company's lawyers more than any other organization. And then regulatory awareness. If you have to be compliant to government regulations, a lot of times that drives important aspects of the cybersecurity program. You need to understand those regulations. Finally, you're the leader. You're the CISO. You're the executive. Be decisive. Your team doesn't want you to do the work for them. They just want you to make sure it's clear what you want them to do. Help them understand how to row the boat in the same direction for success. That's what they need you to do. So be decisive. Be clear in defining priorities. Because I've seen a lot of organizations that are rowing a boat in circles because they're not going the same direction. Don't overcommit. Again, this is important for your organization as it was for you as an individual who was a high performer. Empower your team. Give them the ability to make decisions and get things done without you babysitting them. Recognize achievements. When someone in your team or some group in your organization does well, reward them for it and do it quickly. Don't let that drag on. Finally, never get so busy doing your job that you don't manage your career. right? A lot of us get busy. We're doing our job every day. We're working hard. We're not thinking about our career. If you're not thinking about your career, who's doing it? Nobody, right? There are managers who will help you. There are mentors who will help you. At the end of the day, you're in the driver's seat. If you're in the driver's seat sitting in your parking space and you don't go anywhere, that's not anyone else's fault, right? You've got to back the car up and get on the road. I think that's it. Thank you. And I hope you guys all find this useful. Honestly, I really do. This is more about you than it is about me. I'm honestly, I've achieved everything I ever wanted to have in my career. And, you know, I'm kind of towards the end of my career at this point. What I want to do is help other people who, where I was 20 or 30 years ago, how do you get to where you want to be? It doesn't have to be where I am. Get to where you want to be. Find your place that makes you happy. At the end of the day, the money, the career, the rewards, any of that, it's nice. Find the path that makes you happy. That was my biggest piece of advice. Yes, sir?
You seem to have mastered a lot. Is there anything now that keeps you up at night, that might have kept you up at night in the past?
AI. I think there are a lot of really cool things that are going to happen with AI. I think most businesses are not ready for it, and a lot of times they don't understand the risks that go along with it, and there is a rush to adopt. So for those people who went through the dot-com bubble, right, where your store down the street was suddenly store.com because everyone wanted to be a .com, and there was a big rush for that, but the value for that was not always there. And the risks weren't well understood. And I think we're going to see that. There are a lot of amazing things that are going to happen with AI. It really is. But most companies are not well positioned for it because AI's biggest advantage is when you understand your business process, your data is well organized, and you understand your data flows and the contribution that data makes to your business. Most companies are missing 2 or 3 of those, right? So, but that's not stopping them from throwing AI in and connecting it to everything in the environment. So we'll see how that works out. Yes? I think one of the things I try and keep in mind, this is important, is her question was, when you're not making the progress you want to make, how do you keep yourself motivated? And keep in mind, my whole career in IT started because I was about to get laid off, right? My career in AppSec started because my boss was about to assign me the shittiest job you could find. So there's setbacks, but they don't have to be long-term. And the trick sometimes is to finding a path out, and sometimes that path out is not painless, right? So if you feel stuck, is it stuck because of where you're at? Is it stuck because of where you're doing? Is it stuck because of perception? Honestly, here's something else. I've seen a lot of people miss opportunities because they were expecting failures. They expected problems, so they saw problems, and an opportunity would walk right past them, and you'd be like, hey, that's an opportunity. And they'd be like, no, that's something gone wrong, right? If you expect opportunities, if you work things like an opportunity, it's weird how life sometimes turns that around and makes it an opportunity. Any other question for me? Yeah? This is the imposter syndrome. I didn't bring it up, and honestly, you fake it until you make it. Because I've had a lot of jobs over my career where I stepped in and I went, I am so over my head. I hope they don't fire me. But you figure it out, right? You figure out what is it I need to do to prove that I'm the right person, right? And a lot of times when you get opportunities, it isn't over your head opportunity. Here's something else. If somebody else believes in you enough to give you an opportunity, then don't question yourself, right? Don't be your own hater, right? Somebody else believed in you. The least you could do is believe in yourself as much as they did, right? So when you get an opportunity, if you think that it's not like you're over your head, it's okay. Just figure out how to swim. Right? Yes. Right. I think that's it. I hope that there's some nugget in all of this stuff that is helpful to you guys. And I think the presentations will be available to people after this, so you're free to check it out. And if you want to reach out to me, feel free to do that. Yes? Yes. You're welcome. You're welcome. And I'm happy to talk about this later if you reach out to me on LinkedIn or something else and say, hey, I'd like to talk about some of the stuff. I'm happy to talk to people about it. All right. Yes. Yep. Yep. All right. Thank you all. I appreciate it.